Looking to improve your life, brush up on your personal growth techniques? You are in the right place. Welcome to Life's Little Lessons with your host, author of Designing Your Own Destiny, Kevin A. Dunlap.
And welcome back, everybody. Today we have Galina Lipina. She is a wonderful woman that is only 33 years old and is financially independent. And we're going to be discovering some of the techniques that she became that way, as well as what she's doing now. Right now, she is actually a turning point strategist for her company, which you can find later on at turningpoint.pro. She is originally from Russia, and she moved here to the United States when she was 23 years old. And when she was actually 33, she had a goal to be financially independent within 2 years. And she actually made that within 1 year and 10 months, 2 months shy of her actual desire of achieving that. So we will be discovering some of the things that she did to do that, as well as what she's doing now. Everybody, please just welcome to the show, Galina. Galina, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. My pleasure.
We were just having a nice little conversation right before the recording of this show. And could you tell us and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Well, a little bit about myself. You covered some basic facts. So I'm from Russia originally. I moved here when I was 23, working in IT. I was a system analyst and a project manager for most of the time. But as many of us, I was bitten by a bug of Tim Ferriss and 4-Hour Workweek. And ever since I read that book many years ago, I knew that was a way better fit for me than 9 to 5. And I had that desire to create that freedom lifestyle for many, many, many years. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago, actually 3 now, that I realized the reason I've never created progress on that desire is I never set it as a goal with a timeline. It always stayed as, wouldn't that be nice someday? Okay. And I asked myself a couple of questions back then, asking, okay, if I want to set it as a goal, what would be the goal? And if I were to be 100% committed to that goal, what would I do? And that led to the story of events and eventually me creating financial freedom within 2 years of setting that goal.
And how did you do that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was working as a consultant, so I was making really good salary. And through intention and synchronicities, I switched projects and I pretty much doubled my salary without doing anything different. It was just the category of consultancy versus contractor. I was working for Boeing. And that allowed me to save a lot of money. And through the journey of Tim Ferriss' book and me figuring out how I'm going to do it, I also was certified as a life coach. And life coaching and transformation is something that is a big passion of mine. And originally, I thought that I will retire or create that freedom by working as a coach and doing it through coaching, through Skype, being anywhere I want. Well, after giving it a shot, I realized I did not want to do coaching full time. It's just something felt really wrong to me about depending on getting clients to pay my bills. Like I really wanted to make sure that I'm working on helping somebody when I really feel like I want to, not because my bills are due yesterday. So then I realized I still have a goal to create financial freedom, but that's not going to be through coaching. And then what dawned on me is like, okay, instead of me trying to create income through coaching that will support my freedom, why don't I make money, invest them well, so I will create passive income, and that will support my lifestyle. And then I can do coaching on my free time at any pace at any financial point. So that's what I did. Don't ask me how and why, but I had this idea in my head that what if I find investments that are going to bring me 20% or more a year? Something stable, something that I can rely on every month. And I set that as a goal. And I found the investment. There's a website investment company that I invested with. That was exactly that. So with all the savings that I had through my job and, making more and more every year, within 2 years, I was able to hit 6 figures of passive income. And that was the moment when I gave notice to my boss and quit.
How long ago was that?
That was a year ago.
A year ago? Well, congratulations. And at the age of 32, age of 33, you were financially independent.
Yeah. So to do a little bit of tweaks to your fast, so I got independent at the age of 33. I'm now 35. A year and a few days later. And my goal was set a couple years before that. So I guess that was 31. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And what kind of investments, or is that something that you can share?
Oh, absolutely. I can share. There's a company. You can check it out at incomestore.com. And it's a very unique company. Bill and Ken brothers, who are running it in different capacities. Ken is the CEO. And I met Ken as he was speaking at one of the Peak Potentials trainings at the weekend seminar called Never Work Again. That was a 3-day seminar about passive income. And the moment I saw Ken on stage and he was speaking about their company who's been, 20-something year in business, doing websites for companies. And for the last few years, diving into the world of people just investing in the websites and them doing all the work to acquire a site, manage it, and then splitting the profits with the investor. And the moment that he said it's completely passive, that there's a stable return, that they guarantee in the contract, I knew I was in. So I spoke with Ben and Cal for a little bit. They're amazing people. Such high level of integrity. I could feel it right away. And that's what gave me trust to invest with them. And, I got my first site. A year later, I got my second site. And a year later, I got my third site. And that's where I hit my goal. So go check it out, incomestore.com. I think as of right now, their How It Works page has my video. They invited me to speak on their digital footprint event in Atlanta 6 months ago, where I was able to share my story of retiring in way more detail.
Oh, fantastic. I'm assuming you're not the normal person through their company, but you're definitely a good case study.
Yeah. And they're mostly of their customers are the ones who are looking for a higher return on investments but lower risk. And they have a lot of corporate clients, a lot of business owners who want to diversify maybe with real estate or other investments that they have. Yeah. So if you go check it out, if you want connections, ask for Bill Courtright, and he's awesome.
And what is it that you're doing now?
What I'm doing now? Well, I retired a year ago, and I spent some of the time just for the reset. I went to Europe to travel. I visited Russia. And then after living in Seattle for so many years, I realized I want to be in a warmer place. So I went and I lived in Mexico, Playa del Carmen for about 4 months. And by the end of those 4 months, I realized laying on the beach is nice, but it was time for me to figure out what I'm meant to do. And I knew it's going to be around coaching, personal development, helping people really create the lives that they like and not just the lives that they live by default. And yet again, those 2 questions that I asked myself, if I haven't figured out what I'm meant to do, what was actually my level of commitment to figuring that out? Mm-hmm. And I realized my level of commitment was not 100%. It was in and out all this time. And I was like, okay, if I were to be 100% committed to figure it out right now, what would I do? And the first thought that popped up was hire a coach. So I went, and I already had my coach for some time, but I realized I needed some fresh blood, fresh opinions, fresh points of views. So I put fillers out and I talk to friends and say, hey, this is what I'm figuring out. Who's the best coach you can recommend? And my friend Kathy, she's like, well, I have 3 people for you. So you can interview all 3 of them and decide for yourself who is the best fit. And I did. I interviewed 3 of them, and one of them, actually, they're 2 because they're business partners. Gina and Raj were the choice. So I worked with them for about a month and a half, 2 hours every week, really going through whatever, limiting beliefs I had that was clouding the clarity. And middle of July, it hit me. Like I cleared all the blocks that I had around creating that clarity. And also I went to a workshop, a weekend seminar with Stefan Stavrakis called True Value Articulation. That was a positioning workshop designed to kind of pull out of me what I'm meant to be doing and then put it in a specific business project that I could focus on. And that's how Turning Point was born. I realized through my years of coaching, I really was best helping people who are ready to create change. And I came across a lot of people who said they wanted, but they didn't. And that kind of trickled out my fulfillment with coaching over time. And I was kind of like, I know I need to do it, but it has to be another way, another approach. So what I'm doing now with Turning Point is I'm working with people who already achieved a certain level of like financial success or like real world what people call success. Like you have a good job, you're making good money, you have a good position, or you have a good business. But I really am called to like serve people who are that way, and they have this nagging feeling like, fuck, there's more to life. There's more to life. There's more fulfillment. There's something that I'm meant to do, and it's not it. And there are these turning points. And some of them are in the position that something has to change like now. For some people, it's like, I know something has to change, but I have time. So what I do with those people is they usually take my Turning Point assessment that for those of you who are going through transitions, you can find at my website, turningpoint.pro. And it's a complimentary assessment that you can take to really identify what are the elements of change that you already have handled and what are the points that you maybe need to pay attention to. So people usually take assessment and then we jump on a call to talk about where they are, what are the desires are, and what kind of support they need. And if both of us feel like a hell yes to work with each other, then we get together for a day. One day, 8 hours. And we set the specific goals to achieve in those 8 hours. Usually it's the clarity of the new directions, figure out what fulfills you, and then the strategy to transition into that new life. And then one day we design it.
And you do this in person, on the phone, or how?
Yeah, one days we usually do in person. I have exceptions for people who live on the other side of the planet that we could do like 2 half days over Skype, but definitely preferably in person.
Now, when you're meeting these people, are the turning points like financial turning points, career turning points, emotional relationship turning points, or what kind of people do you mainly tend to work with?
That's a great question. and it was a challenging one for me to decide on, because in my life, my passion is about growing all areas of my life. And at different times, there was different areas. Sometimes I would dedicate more to career, like me achieving financial freedom. Sometimes I dedicate more time to health. Like I've been raw vegan for almost 2 years, and I'm going through a lot of detoxes and always looking for ways to tune in my health. Relationships, I've studied so many hours in personal development and communications and sexuality as it relates to relationship. I want to do all of it, but as my mentor Stefan told me, and which is true, you can't do all at once, not at start. So right now, my focus is people at a turning point as their career, as their life fulfillment, as their career or business, as their calling, their purpose, that. Once I get that off the ground, for sure I'm going to address turning points in relationships and health to start with. But at the moment, it's purpose and career.
I'm going to put you on a little bit on a challenge right here. And this is just because I'm curious, and I think some of the audience members may be also curious, is the day they say, hey, I can be financially free. How was it for you to actually quit your job, give your notice? And what was it for you, your lifestyle? Because now you don't have that 9-to-5 job that you're going to anymore, that 40 hours plus a week that you're putting in. How was that a change for you?
Thank you for this question. It was challenging. It was challenging to give the notice to my boss. And I actually dragged it for probably a month because I already knew and last year in July, I went back to Russia because my younger brother was getting married. And I came back beginning of August and I was working, and in my head, I had the goal to work at Boeing until like at least the end of the year. But August came and I go to the office and I realized I can't do it anymore. And I couldn't focus and I couldn't get myself together for like a week or two. I tried and it was just like I was not performing as I usually am. So actually I had to talk to my manager, who has been the best manager I've had in my life. And I really care about her. And I told her, Florina, I don't know what to do. Like I can't get myself to work as I used to. And she's like, oh, I hear you. I could notice it. And like, what can I do? And I was like, I don't know. And we kind of tried to brainstorm together for another, week or two to see how can I get myself to get back in the groove. And I couldn't. And I realized the main thing that was stopping me, not even the plan to make more money to retire, but I didn't want to leave her. I really felt like for all those years, if I leave her in that very critical point in her project, it's not going to be good. It didn't feel good. She supported me so much through our years together. But then what really hit me, and that's what made my decision, was I realized I'm not doing her any good by staying here, but not being good at what I do. Mm-hmm. And that really is like, oh, so me quitting will actually be the best for her as well. So I gave her the notice, and regular 2 weeks, I knew it's not going to be enough. So we made an agreement that I will stay for up to a month later after those 2 weeks, so she can find a replacement. I can train the replacement. So the last month I was not in the US anymore. I was traveling Europe and working remotely. But I stayed there for an extra month just to support that transition for the project and the new person coming on board. And then it was great. I've never been sitting and doing nothing because I still had my real estate investments going on. I have a couple of fix and flips I'm doing. I have my Airbnb that I ran in the house in Seattle that I'm never there anymore. So I had other things going on. I never felt like, oh, I have nothing to do. But there was this kind of breathing room of waking up and deciding what I want to do and where I want to do it and where do I want to be and who do I want to spend time with. Yeah, it was a very interesting time for sure.
And I'm going to say something. This is something that we kind of shared before the call. is right now, you say your personal residence back in Seattle is you're never there. And we've already talked about, personally not on the show, that you've pretty much moved all of your personal belongings into storage. You're renting out the house Airbnb. So right now you're living kind of like the American dream, where you're just on the road. You're just traveling all over the place. Is that correct? At the time of this recording, you're actually in a hotel room. You just left going for one event and you're on your way to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
So,
I'm currently in Carlsbad, close to San Diego. Probably going to stay here for another week and then possibly go back to LA. I know I'm getting back to Seattle December 7-ish to babysit my brother's kids. My twin brother from Russia just moved to the States in May this year. So that's what actually brought me back from Mexico into the mainland to help them get settled out and stuff. So I'm still going to be coming to Seattle, not just for my house, but now for my family here. Pretty much my life right now is feeling into what calls me next. Like, what's the next place that will be beneficial for my growth, for my business growth, for the relationships I want to establish, and then going and staying there. I'm actually open to find a new kind of like home base in a more warmer climate, because Seattle winter is not good for me at all. And I love Mexico. I love Playa del Carmen, but I feel like in the stage of growing my business turning point, I got to be closer to my potential customers. And in Playa del Carmen, there's way fewer of them.
And you need to be probably in the United States anyway, just because of also accessibility to you to be with your client live, for that 8-hour full day event as well.
Well, that is less important because like Playa del Carmen is to Cancun in Mexico. It's direct flights anywhere in the States. So for the accessibility, it's a great location. Definitely the state sounds much better right now. Is like LA area, San Diego and San Francisco and maybe Seattle. I actually love Vancouver, Canada. Absolutely love the place. A bit rainy for the winter, but it's just creating that momentum and creating this like. In the last month, I've attended a couple events. I spoke at the Digital Footprint event again, this time in LA. And then I attended another event here, Magnify Your Wealth Summit with Aaron Young in San Diego. And I'm meeting so many great people, like people who are entrepreneurs, who are driven, or people who have a job, but they have bigger goals. And yeah, I'm just feeling so inspired. You know how they say, wherever you go in, like you're the average of like 5 people you surround yourself with. And I realized me working in corporate, most of my friends were in corporate.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
And I realized if I'm taking off in the business world and financial freedom, I got to have new friends. And that's what kind of part of what drives me to go to conferences and events, to meet people who are like-minded, who are going in the direction that I'm going.
And that's a very good point that you made there. So those of you that are out there either watching this video or listening to this podcast, Galina just said something that I think is one of the most important things that you need to be aware of. For those of you that are looking to start your own businesses, you need to be around other people that are either have started their own businesses or are in the same boat that you are. That could mean going to conferences. That could mean going to workshops. It could mean going to meetup groups, something along those lines. Because she said it exactly right. You are the average of your 5 closest friends. And that's going to be education-wise. That's going to be your own concepts of whatever you're looking for. That's going to be financial. It's going to be in all those areas. Because if I were to give you a homework assignment right now and say, write down your 5 closest friends, and then you write down what is their estimated income that they're making, I will almost guarantee you that if you add that up and divide by 5, it would be within 10% of what your income is right now. And it doesn't matter if they're making $30,000 a year or they're making $5 million a year. You tend to hang around with people that you feel comfortable with. And if, for an example, if you were a multimillionaire, would you be hanging out with people on a regular basis that were making $60,000 a year? Most likely not. And most likely they're not going to feel comfortable around you anyway, because they will look at you as they'll put you on this kind of a pedestal. It's just the way human nature is. So I'm glad that you said that, Galina, because you are now looking to expand your business and be around other entrepreneurs, and going to these conferences is the perfect way to do that. And we actually met at a conference. It may have been at that same class, Never Work Again. That may have been a class that you and I actually took together, because those people vaguely remember Bill Courtright or whoever it was that was actually giving that presentation. So I know we've been to a couple of conferences together. So that's how we kind of know each other.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the things that we normally cover in my show. Is number one, I'm going to start covering some of your successes. This could be the successes that you had early on for Turning Point, or successes that you're currently having with Turning Point, or successes that you've had in your other areas of your life in becoming financially independent. Would you be willing to share some of those?
Oh, absolutely. Where do I start? What I realized, what inspires me in other people, and those are the things that I'm mostly kind of like acknowledging and grateful for in my life, is when we set goals that to other people seem crazy, and then we hit them.
Yes.
I was living in Russia, and I was finishing college. I was still in college in the university. And I was talking to my boss, and he's like, well, what are your goals? What do you want? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, if you could have anything, what would you do? And I was like, I'd want to become a project manager and move to America. And they're like, okay, well, let's see how we can reverse engineer. And he did this NLP exercise with me, like imagining myself there and then walking step by step, actually backwards, to see what are the steps I need to take. Just great exercise. If you ever at par of you don't know how you like go towards your goal, go backwards. It really works. Probably, let me think, how long did it take for me to move here? A year and a half since that exercise. I was living in the States. And at that time, I've never even been to the States. So since then, I went to a few business trips with my company and then eventually moved.
Us as Americans, I don't think we can appreciate what you just said there. And I know I can't appreciate it, not knowing. For you as a Russian citizen to come to America, was that like an easy thing to do between you and your friends? Or was it something like a big challenge? Because number one, it's not your native language. I don't know what level of English that you were good at. Let's just say us as Americans, if you say, hey, I'm going to get up and move to another state where I don't know anybody, or I'm going to move to Mexico, or I'm going to do whatever, we may think, okay, that's a big deal. But now you're flying across an ocean and you're coming to the U.S. What city did you decide to go to? Why did you go there? And did you know anybody there?
Well, for me, it was relatively not hard because I was working for a company. It was a software company, Locksoft, I think the biggest software development company in Russia. And they had customers in the States. Boeing was one of them. And when I was switching my career tracks from being a developer to being an analyst's job is to go meet the customers and collect the requirements and write the documentation. So I had to come on site. And my project, the department of the Boeing we worked with, and that project was located in Seattle. So that's what brought me to Seattle. I went here for a few business trips, like I think 4 in total. And after the last business trip that lasted me 4 months, I realized that I don't want to go back. And yet again, I talked to my manager saying, anyway, you can transfer me here on a full-time basis. And he was like, well, we don't have any openings right now, but when we do, I'll keep you in mind. And a few months later, he called me up and asked, like, do you still want to move here? And I was like, yes. And that's how it happened. For me, it was relatively easy because the company did all the visa, all the paperwork and all that. For a regular person who lives in Russia and want to come to the States, even as a tourist, it's challenging. Because getting a visa is hard. A lot of people getting denied. Oh, God, I got denied for the first business visa because they said, oh, you're young and single. You don't have any properties in Russia. You're going to stay in U.S. They didn't believe that I'm going to come back, so they declined the visa.
Well, they were right in the long run.
Well, yeah. But yeah, it took us like the second attempt to apply again to explain more that I am really coming for a business trip. And yeah, as far as English, I've been very fortunate. My parents early on kind of knew that it's a very important thing. So I actually studied English since I was 6 years old. So when I came to America, it was an adjustment because in Russia we studied British English. So,
proper English. Okay.
So when I came, it was like a little funny on my ears, and it took an adjustment to speaking and listening to it. But for the rest, it was relatively easy.
And for those of you out there in America, British English and American English, a lot of it is still the same. And it's also British English is a lot more proper than American conversational English. And plus, they use different words for different things. Like I know, for an example, because I've got some British friends.
Supper and dinner.
What's that again?
Supper and dinner.
Well, I've used both of those interchangeably. However, the ones that come to mind are going to be like torch for a flashlight or the boot for your trunk. So there's other words that they use, like, okay, which I was watching any British movie. And you would say, I understand mostly what they're saying, but it is a little bit different.
Oh, I love Hugh Grant.
Oh, yes. And so tell me a little bit about some of your challenges that you've had, either with your current business or or with your investments?
Well, my lowest point would probably be right about a year before I decided to create financial freedom. And that's around the time, actually, we met a little after, but it was the time when I was doing a lot of peak potential courses. And it was the year where I made an agreement with my boss to work remotely and part-time, so I would be able to dedicate more time to studying and working on my coaching business and just study stuff around life and business. And those courses with peak potentials at a time for me, they're quite expensive. Like I spent a few tens of thousands of dollars on them. And as a smart, maybe, investor I was like, why would I want to spend my own money on this? If I can go and get a 0% credit card that will be 0% for a year and a half. And by that time, hopefully I'll apply all this business knowledge and make this money and pay it off. So I opened like 2 or 3 of those cards. And that was actually a smart decision. What wasn't that smart is I didn't keep track of the timer. And I didn't keep track. I was like, in 6 months, I got to pay it off. And besides the courses, I started putting my life expenses there too. And what happened is Boeing had layoffs. And they have a rule that before they lay off any Boeing people, they have to lay off the contractors. So here's my boss calling me up and saying, hey, I can only keep you for 2 more months and then I have to cut. And I was like, oh shit, if I'm not going to have this money coming, I can't pay off my cards. And I'm like not a fan at all to pay credit card high percentage fees. So it was that time that was really, really challenging where I knew I had no money and I tried to find a new job and I couldn't find it as fast as I wanted. And I was in the state, I was like, fuck, in 3 months, I have to pay it off. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. And the job is not coming. I was a bit stressed. A bit is an understatement. and thank God I had a boyfriend at the time who was really supportive emotionally, not financially. But he was like, look, you're going to make it. You're creative. You're going to find ways. And he's like, you're out of a job. Relax. Enjoy your time. It's nice to not. And I was like, no. If I know I have a job on the horizon, that I can relax. So it was this time when I told to myself, never again I'm going to be in the state. Never again I'm going to be in the state that I don't have money to pay my bills. And it was such a point that's no matter what happens in my life, I will never get back to that state. And I think that's what really propelled me. Well, long point short, 3 months later, I did find a position. It was actually almost within the same group at Boeing, and I started making money. And, we made agreements with the bank to handle the delayed payments and stuff. But that was, I guess, my turning point, is to really realize that we all have this comfort jobs and things that we feel secure, but none of it is secure. Us having a job can change any moment, and then what do? Do we have enough savings to support ourselves for many months, or do we not? So when people say, oh, I have a job, I'm scared to start a business because this is secure, this is the biggest misconception. Because at least when you run your business, it's up to you to make it successful. And when you're at a job, sometimes you can't really control certain things.
And I'm going to share, since you're being so vulnerable, I'm going to share a story with you as well. Big hugs out to you, by the way, because I see you're emotionally stressed right now.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. In 1999, I was working a full-time job as a computer programmer, and this was in June of 1999. I was working on something known as, and I don't know if you were in the States at this time, but it was something known as Y2K, which was the year 2000 change. This is when, because everything was, all the dates, the years were in, were in 2 digits of 97, 98, 99. And they were afraid that when we go to 00, that it's going to think it's 1900, not 2000. And therefore, the whole banking institute, there was a huge, huge fear going on in the States at that time. And I was finishing up a gig I was working for a company called CTG, which was part of a subsidiary of IBM. So we were contract employees. And I was being subcontracted at a bank right at that time in North Carolina. And I decided to go and say, hey, I'm finishing up my gig here. They haven't found me another subcontractor gig to go to yet, kind of like with you would be the contractor. And I said, well, you know what? I've always wanted to go to stunt school because, I was wanting to get into the stunt industry. And I went to Seattle in 1999, in July of 1999 for 3 weeks. And I said, well, I got 2 weeks vacation, so I'm going to take that off. And I'll use my 2 weeks vacation, and then I'll take, another week as well. And we were always paid 2 weeks in advance. Our paychecks came 2 weeks after that we worked it. So I went to stunt school and I came back. And when I came back, my my boss would say, we haven't found another gig for you yet, just hold on. So I held on, getting paid for like 3 weeks of just sitting around not doing anything, kind of like, living in limbo. It's like, what's going to happen next? And then my boss gave me a call, says, oh, by the way, we can't find you another gig. We have to let you go. Since this is the middle of the year, you didn't earn that second week of vacation, so we're going to take that out of your prepaid week that you paid you. And by the way, since you took that second week off, we're taking that other week out of it as well. So therefore, we're letting you go, and you have no severance package. And okay, what am I going to do now? And I was floored. I'm kind of like yourself. I mean, I was emotionally distraught. I had no income coming in. I mean, I was not retired. I didn't qualify for any kind of, I didn't know if I qualified for any kind of benefits or anything. And that turned me off to corporate America. I've never worked a full-time job for corporate America since 1999. Now I've done part-time as a teacher and bartender and things like that until like 2003 before I moved to Las Vegas. But I fully feel where you're coming from. And for those of you that are just listening to the show, Galina was going through some very emotional stresses on her face when she was reliving this story. So she understands what it's like to be at that bottom rung there. It's like, okay, just so distressed. And then what is it? 1 year later, 2 years later, you were financially independent. So this is a phenomenal person to really get to know. And I think what you have to offer, because you've been there, you actually hit that point. You understand emotionally what it feels like. When I lost my home to foreclosure during the housing crunch in 2007, I still remember sitting on the staircase the night before after I'd moved everything out, making sure I had all of my little things walking through the house one more time. And I just sat down in that staircase, and it just felt like so diminished, so just I was completely distraught. I sat there and cried. And then when I locked the door and left for that time, and I think there was a lockbox on the house no, there was. I don't remember what I did with the key. But I ended up I walked away from that house. And this was probably about a month before the foreclosure, but I had already gotten the notices, and I just went ahead and moved out anyway. I mean, I've been there. Some of the listeners and viewers have been there as well. And thank you for sharing that story with us. That's really, it's really nice that you're willing to be so vulnerable.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add to the listeners who maybe are going through hard times financially is in those times, it's really, really, really hard sometimes to keep your eye on the goal. And it gets much easier just to focus on the things that are not working and the stress of the current day. And what I know was the reason that I got through it was really, okay, I'm at this point now, but what do I want? And not just what I want, but what am I committed to? Okay, fine, I'm sitting without a job, not ability to pay my bills, but what's my goal? And once you get that and you get in the right state of intentionality and the right state of action, and also trusting that everything is for the better, that was a big part of what calmed me down at the moment, is knowing that it is for the better, that I'm always supported by universe, God, whatever you believe in. And if I'm in this state, there is a reason and there is a gift and I got to find it. So just that part of like letting go of resistance, letting go of like judgment of the current situation, or like this desire to like get out of it as soon as possible, and just really kind of like relaxing into, not relaxing and sitting on the couch, but kind of breathing through it is like, okay, it's fucking hard and challenging and I'm very stressed, but somehow, some way it's meant to be right now. And somehow it is part of your journey, and somehow it's preparing maybe you for something greater. And every time you get stressed, refocusing on your dreams, your goals, your commitments to yourself and life. And the more you can stay in that state of aligned with the kind of thing that you want in your life, the faster the progression through those dark times would be.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to have dark times. And I still feel like those dark times are sometimes the most rewarding things that we can have in the long run, in the future. Losing my house, and now I understand, I can feel for somebody else that's going through the same process because I've been there and I got through it. And and as long as you don't let it beat you, meaning that you do something stupid like harm yourself or just get so distraught that you start doing drugs or alcohol or whatever, you learn from that. And when you have hit rock bottom, and here's the funny thing is, when you've hit rock bottom, you can't go any lower. You can only go up from.
Be careful what you ask for. But yeah, another saying came to mind. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines that for the companies or individuals, when you're in those like tough times and you're kind of like squeezed by life, your true nature comes out. So it's a real test. Like for those people, for some of us who are like, we're like positive thinkers and we like trust everything is for the better. When you get in tough situations, do you stay in that state or do you go into all life sucks and whatever? And if you are in this tough situation, are you still be generous with people around you, be kind, or do you start becoming, like resentful and judgy and out of integrity? Because how you are in those tough times, it's not just, oh, he's stressed, he must be that way. It's like, no, like true nature of people and how they are really come out with those two moments. So, learning opportunity about yourself and see like which parts of you maybe you got to integrate and address, if there are any childhood fears and whatnot, and really refocus on the kind of person you really want to be to create the kind of life that you desire.
And to dovetail for that as well, one of the things I would also suggest is having at least one other person in your life that you can share this with, and to kind of like a accountability partner where they can say, okay, I understand what you're going through now. Let's figure out how we're going to work on the solution rather than focusing on the problem. Having somebody else there with you to do that, even though it may be embarrassing. I know when I lost my house to foreclosure, for 3 years after that, none of my family members knew that I lost the house. And they would say, what happened to your house? I said, well, I got rid of that house. That's how I explained it. Now, I did get rid of it. I just got rid of it because I took it. But I made them think I sold it. So I was personally embarrassed about the situation. However, I got through it, and I know other people that got through it, and you got through your situation. And if those of you that are having hard times, it's going to get better. Just focus on the solutions. So,
exactly.
Well, you just shared some very early challenges, and that was a huge challenge that you went through. I want to say again, thank you for that. And as we're about to wrap this show up, are there any lessons or any upbeat moments that you would give to any entrepreneur getting started or to somebody that's just starting up without giving too much away of your Turning Point program? So anything that you would like to share?
Upbeat moments or strategy.
Or lessons.
Or lessons.
Yes.
What came to mind right now and I feel called to share is actually a story from early on in my life. And I was living in Russia with my parents, and my dad, he was a very, very confident, very strong individual, but sometimes he had this say that he thinks he knows best for what was best for us as kids.
Of course.
And I was in this kind of early rebellion attitude, wanting to do things. And he's like, no, you can't do it. And I was like, well, why not? I want to do it. Done my homework. Why can't I go and play? And he said something that pretty much defined the course of my life. He said, until you live under my roof and I pay your bills, you're going to do what I say.
Okay.
And for many people, it could be like a very depressive kind of state. But for me, it was like, oh, that just tells me what I need to do. I need to move out here and I need to start making my own money. And then I can do anything I want. And that's what got me on the course that I moved out of my house when I went to college and I started making money as soon as I can, and the rest is history. The lesson and the inspiration, what I would offer the listeners is it's not the life and what happens to you defines you, it's how you react to it that does. And it's not my saying, I didn't invent it, but it's no matter what's happening in your life, whether it's really great or really stressful, it's up to you to define how you want to react to it, and that will define the kind of results you'll create. Yeah, very often people, they say they have traumatic childhood, but that really was a springboard for them creating awesome life. And there are people who have awesome lives and they just become complacent and kind of cruise through life. So yeah, just that trust that whatever needs to happen for you to get to that next level, you'll face, and it will be up to you to take the right action and stuff.
Well, thank you. And that's actually the name of my company is called Plentiful Perspectives. And that's basically what you just said right there is there's always another way of looking at something. And your way may not always be the best way. And you're absolutely right. You just changed your attitude when your dad said, if you live under my roof, you have to follow by my rules. And that's a very common saying here in the States as well. And that way that you looked at it was, instead of being restrictive, that gave you like, oh my gosh, I got to get my own roof. So that's a wonderful way of looking at things.
Yeah, there's another thing that I really want to share. And that's what motivated me my whole life. And that's why Turning Point is, too many of us live life by default. Like we grow up and we go to school and we go to college and get a job, maybe start a business, but we do it because we think that that's what we should do. That's how life is. And thank God for Tim Ferriss, because it really kind of broke the mold for me of what's possible. And what I always felt from very, very early on, like I never felt like a fit in the Russian culture, because it was mostly about survival, is like, there's more to life than this. We're here to fucking enjoy and have fun and play and create some awesome stuff. And it doesn't have to look like anybody. And everybody is very, very unique. For what works for one person doesn't work for the other. For somebody, job is the perfect thing. For somebody, job is absolutely the thing that kills them. Mm-hmm. So what really motivates me and what I want to inspire people is to really look into, what do you want? Like, what is the kind of life you want to live? And if you wouldn't think about what's possible, like if you don't limit yourself only, oh, I think it's possible, therefore I'm going to want it. Like if you take the lid off and say, okay, if I would have a magic wand, what kind of life would I want to live? What would be my lifestyle? What would be my lifestyle with my career, contribution to society, and finances? What would be my lifestyle as relates to relationships and family and health and fun and really kind of connect to that. And if you can't, because for me that was the biggest reason, I didn't know what I want, work with somebody, hire a coach, go to transformational workshops, do whatever you do to figure out what you want. There's so many tools these days to be able to do it. And once you figure out what do you want, go for it. Like commit to it to start with. And then once you commit, you'll get whatever you need on the way, whatever support you need, whatever learning you need. Like we'll live in these times when the whole saying of anything is possible is more accurate than ever. So just, it kills me when people live average lives just because they think that's all they can have. And it's all they can have because they haven't committed to something bigger. And for those of you who know what you want but are struggling on the way, well, no, you're already one step ahead of most people. You at least know what you want.
Yes, it's true.
That's a big win. And then the how and the process, it's a process. We don't get all the answers up front, but once you start going and you'll get the next steps, and just keep going. Just don't give up.
And I'm glad you said that, because I actually mentioned that in my book, The Designing Your Own Destiny. It's actually in the introduction to the book. And you actually hinted at this already during the show. In my book, which is on discovering your passion and creating that pathway, it's called Designing Your Own Destiny. And in that book, in the introduction, it just says that this book is not your end all. It's not your end all be all book. This is for you to get started. Now, this will help you get to other books. Example, 4-Hour Work Week, which is one of the best books I've ever. Well, I've never read it. I've got it on my shelf back here, and I've got the audio of it, and I've listened to the audio 3 times. So I've never actually read the book. It's the only book that, for those of you that are doing audio books, it's the only book that I would say you'd have to have both the audio version and the print version. And I don't know which way you experienced it. The audio version, because Tim Ferriss has more of a lighter voice, but he has a very strong personality. And the person that read the book on the audiobook has a very strong voice. So I'm glad that Tim Ferriss didn't read it, even though I prefer to listen to books that are read by the author. But that book, it goes through at least the last 1/3 of the book. If you're listening to it, he probably goes through at least 100 different websites. It's like, there's no way you can write all these websites down by the spelling that they may or may not be the way you think it's going to be. Or that's why you need the print version of the book. But going back to what I was saying about my personal book, is it's not the be-all, end-all book. Just like you said with having a coach. I hired this coach for a month and a half. That coach got you from point A to point B, but they're not going to get you to point C. You need to go hire another coach to get you from B to C. And that's what I said in the book was, this book is kind of like, it's to teach you high school football. I'm not going to teach you how to play in the NFL. That's for somebody else. This book is to get you from this point to that point. Then from high school football, you're going to go to college. And college is you get another coach to get you how to play on the field in college football, which then if you get picked by the pros, then you can get another coach for that. Let's say I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. That Green Bay Packers coach is not going to teach middle school football. There's completely different concepts there. So if you're wanting to get something and get further, go and hire a coach. You can hire myself as a business and entrepreneur coach. You can hire Galina as your turning point strategist. You could hire any of a number of other people and just get started. Even if you don't even know what is it that you want to do, that's kind of half of what a beginning coach is going to be there to do is to help you figure out what is your passion in life. One of the things that you mentioned, I call it the wheel of life. Other people call it the life wheel. In my book, I talk about there's 10 different areas of your life. When it's going to be career, when it could be health, when it's going to be relationships with your significant other, Another one's going to be your relationship with your friends and other family. It's going to be, what is your leisure? What is your fun stuff? There's so many different areas of your life. And it could be that you need to focus on your health right now. Well, let's go hire a personal trainer or a dietitian or whomever, and let's get that in order. If you're going to start a business, then get around people that are starting businesses or hire a coach to help you get you started. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with all that, Galina. I would really appreciate that. If the audience members wanted to get a hold of you, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you? You mentioned your website earlier. Would you mind mentioning it again?
Yeah, so my website is turningpoint.pro, and there's a contact form and take action page. For those of you who are going through changes, I highly encourage you to go and at least take my assessment, because it's complimentary and you will get certain clarity around the things that you got to focus on. Also, I offer a complimentary consultation after you take the assessment. The point of the consultation is not for me to convert you into my client, but is to me really see where you are, where do you want to be, and what do I think is the best method or path to get there. Because throughout my life and the last 8-9 years in personal development and coaching, I went through a lot of courses, a lot of people, and a lot of things. And when people speak to me and they got on the phone, it's like, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to be. And it's like, okay, you need to go and take that course, or you need to go and read this book. So my purpose of that complimentary consultation is to share with you what I would do if I were in your shoes. And if for some of you, I feel like hiring me would be the best way, I'll let you know. And of course, it'll be common choice to do that. Mostly like what drives me in like offering those complimentary consultations is people who are taking a step to reach out and ask for help. I want to make sure they get it. And it might be just me pointing them in the right direction, me like recommending them a book or whatever, like I said. So if you're feeling like you're in a change, how Ken Courtwright said, you're either in a storm or getting out of the storm or getting into a storm. and my goal is to just offer you whatever you need in the moment. So you can contact me through my website. There's a contact form. There is a way to get on my calendar through just booking in right there. And yeah, I would just love to help however I can.
Oh, fantastic. And that's going to be at turningpoint.pro. Thank you for sharing with that. And I've not taken your assessment. I probably will take it in the next couple of days, because I'd just like to see, just to even get more clarity in what I'm trying to do with myself, because I know I'm not perfect. I know you say you're not perfect, and we're all growing. We're all still learning. So I'll probably end up taking your assessment over the next couple of days. And I do appreciate you for being on the show today. Any last words before we depart ways?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I love talking, obviously, about this subject. Like creating change in life is one of my main passions. And yeah, I feel really honored to be on the show. I feel really honored to being able to share what I can and with people. And yeah, just thank you. Grateful.
I'm just glad that we're able to reconnect. We really haven't really seen each other in a couple of years now. And it was at the Peak Potentials, which is now called Success Resources. And I highly recommend those classes, even if you've got to put them on a 0% credit card. So I was like, attend those classes, because they were a big turning point for me as well. And like one of my biggest classes from that group of courses was one that's called Train the Trainer. That's the one that changed my life to be, hey, I want to be on stage. That got me within a month of taking that class. I actually hired my book writing coach. Or actually, it was a year after that. I hired my book writing coach, which got me to doing these shows. And so the classes were life transforming. And you met a great way to do an investment strategy that gave you your financial independence. So that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And thank you for being on the show as well, Galina. And I would look forward to chatting with you offline, just between the two of us, because I would like to really just to get to know you better and maybe even do some kind of power partnership of some sort that we could possibly do.
Yeah, so, I'm always open to possibilities. For sure. That'd be great.
Well, everybody, this is Kevin Dunlap with Life's Little Lessons. And I want to say, go check out turningpoint.pro, take her assessment, do the complimentary consultation call. And I want to say thank you, everybody, for listening to today's show. And Galina, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Life's Little Lessons with your host, author of Designing Your Own Destiny, Kevin A. Dunlap. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit kevinadunlap.com, facebook.com/kevinadunlap.author, and on Twitter @KevinADunlap. We'll catch you on the next episode of Life's Little Lessons.